From 1970 to 1990, we had an increase in the number of neighborhoods that were these high poverty neighborhoods in the U.S. And by high poverty, I mean areas that had 40% of the residents or above living at or under the poverty line. In these neighborhoods, the research has shown that we have these neighborhood effects in that you have higher rates of school dropout, teen pregnancy, crime, drug abuse. Somehow the neighborhoods that are these highly impoverished areas sort of contribute to ill outcomes. So public policy has really, since 1992 with the Hope 6 legislation, has really tried to break up the concentration of poverty. And if we think about it, the reason why we have this concentration of poverty is prior public policies. We sort of put all the high-rise public housing in these low-income areas, and the areas that tend to have high proportions of poverty tend to have high proportions of high-rise public housing. But at the same time, we need to sort of think about how we redevelop these spaces without sort of going from all low-income to all high-income. Well, with the redevelopment, there are three questions in particular that I'm focusing on. One, in comparing this community to Harlem and Bronzeville, I looked at those areas and the redevelopment that took place in the late 90s, early 2000. And the time period I was looking at, those communities were going through black gentrification, that they were low-income African-American neighborhoods, and the new residents that were coming back were middle and upper-income African-Americans. So the economic situations were changing pretty drastically in these communities, but the racial composition wasn't changing very much. They were staying predominantly African-American. Now, turning to Shaw, what I've noticed that in the sort of same time period, sort of middle, late 90s, early 2000s, the community has really gone through multiracial gentrification, where upper-income African Americans, whites, and Hispanics are moving into this formerly low-income African American neighborhood. And so I really want to look at what is related to that type of redevelopment. The second question is, well, now that you've brought different races, different classes, different ethnicities, and also people of different sexual orientations to this community, what are the social interactions that are taking place? How does neighborhood politics play out in a neighborhood that is this diverse? The third question, do low-income people actually benefit? And in which ways do low-income people benefit when middle and upper-income people live adjacent to them? We have a lot of hypotheses out there that there should be some spillover effect and that low-income people will have greater opportunities when they live within a mixed-income environment as opposed to a highly concentrated poverty neighborhood. But we really don't have the empirical literature as of yet to really see what are those tangible benefits. I do think that it's a tension, and it's difficult because it's not all good or all bad. For the low-income people who are still there and able to remain, one of the things that they talk about is the idea that they feel that there's a perception that there's less crime, and they actually feel safer with having upper-income whites, blacks, and Hispanics in the neighborhood. So they see that as a positive. But at the same time, they also see amenities that they feel that they may not be able to access, such as the expensive restaurants that come in, that they don't have the income and don't want to spend the income on. Things like the bike paths. They see that the bike paths are coming in, and some of the old-time African-American residents that I've talked to said, that isn't being built for us. And if you look at who's riding their bike, the majority, not all, but the majority happen to be young, white, young professionals who are biking around. So, amenities such as a bike path, which we might all see as being a positive, by some residents is seeing more as a signal that they're about to be kicked out of the neighborhood. Shaw Junior High has been closed down for a while, but there is a park there. And the park is pretty split up and pretty segregated. There's a dog park, which is a new park that just got built. Lights went up on the dog park, and resources were spent, but the majority majority of dog walkers that you see are whites, and the majority of whites were the ones who advocated for that dog park. Right next to that dog park, within the same park, you have soccer fields, and many Hispanics utilize the soccer fields. Well, the soccer fields are all torn up. There hasn't been any new grass planted there. That amenity has not been rehabilitated. Next to that, you have basketball courts, and the basketball courts haven't been revitalized in a while, and pretty much the majority of people playing basketball are African American. So you have this sort of public resource of park, but certain segments of the park have been redeveloped and revitalized, and that leads residents to question sort of who is this redevelopment really for? What I'm seeing is that there really, preliminary, hasn't been a lot of new sort of peer networks. So you don't see people having true meaningful interactions across race and class. I also don't see these sort of superficial interactions that happen on the block level really leading to new job sort of opportunities for low-income people. When you ask me how do you think this study might affect public policies, well, things along the choice neighborhoods, the promise neighborhoods, and trying to see that we can do things to stimulate redevelopment and bring different groups together, but when they come together, we also need to think about how are we going to bring them together in a meaningful way that brings sort of commonalities together, so we reduce stereotypes and stigmas and facilitate tolerance, I think is an important thing that public policy often misses.